Welcome to Left, Right, Center, where we are covering Colorado politics. First on CBS News Colorado. I'm political specialist Sean Boyd. Let's start with the story we broke here on CBS News Colorado this week. A new effort to address skyrocketing property taxes. Colorado Concern, the state's largest association of CEOs, and Advance Colorado, a conservative group that's championed numerous tax relief measures, have formed an unlikely coalition to head off an historic property tax hike.
Came at it from very opposing or different places.
For years, Dave DeVia and Michael Fields have been on opposing sides of every major tax measure to go before voters. Now, for the first time, they are teaming up on a measure that they say will fix property taxes in Colorado permanently.
I would love to never have to talk about property taxes again.
They've submitted initial paperwork for a ballot initiative that would cap any increase in property tax revenue at 4% year over year and adjust the state assessment rate accordingly. For residential property, the rate would drop to at least 5.7%, and homeowners could deduct $55,000 from the taxable value of their home. For commercial property, the rate would be cut to 25.5%.
This is a fair and balanced approach.
The measure also calls for the legislature to provide some level of backfill for local governments and special districts, and specifically protects the state education fund.
We care about teachers, we care about firefighters, we care about local governments, and we believe that this is a fair and balanced approach.
One that they say would save $236 a year on a $300,000 home. It comes as a property tax commission meets to come up with a recommendation for lawmakers. Field says he's open to hearing their ideas, but he's not optimistic given the legislature's history of providing temporary relief.
The fact that they've already allowed them to spike 30 or 40% this year makes me concerned about it. I think the governor's been clear that he wants a cap, that he wants to make sure property taxes are under control. It's the legislators who haven't stepped up and done that yet. We've pulled this stuff, and it pulls very high. I think we can, I know we can win this if we put it on the ballot. The question is what's best for Colorado, and I think the current system is not what's best for Colorado.
Joining me are analyst, Democrat Mike Dino, Republican Dick Wadhams. So Mike, start with you. These are two groups with pretty deep pockets, so I have no doubt they're going to make the ballot. Will this measure pass?
Well, if they're voting this week, probably, because we all got our property taxes, right. and I know mine went up, and everybody else's I've talked to obviously has. And we'll see. Economic issues are going to be at the forefront in November. All the polls we've seen, and Michael Fields, talked about polling shows that it's very favorable. But even polls from other people in Colorado show that housing and housing affordability is a big issue. So it's going to be on everybody's mind in November when they get their ballots, and I think it'll have a good chance of passing.
Dick, I want your thoughts on that too. The legislature has put together a property tax task force, right, to come up with a long-term solution. Right. If they don't, what do you see the impact of this being in 2024 election?
Well, I think getting out ahead of that commission, I think is terribly significant. And I wouldn't say the commission is now irrelevant, but I think this is a very understandable proposal. Go back to 22 levels, 4% cap on property taxes. Voters and, more importantly, property taxpayers like us can understand that. I think it's going to have a lot of appeal, and what they're doing for local governments. So I think it's going to be hard to oppose this. So there will be opposition, of course, because frankly, Democrats love high taxes. But I think on this one, I think it's going to be hard to kill it.
We'll see, especially I think if this task force comes back with something that's real complicated, yes, because voters don't like those complicated measures. Right. Well, ballots hit the mail this week for Colorado's March 5th presidential primary. On the GOP ballot, 4 candidates who've dropped out of the race, along with one who could be kicked off the ballot by the U.S. Supreme Court. Although I was at the hearing last week challenging Donald Trump's eligibility, and I think it is unlikely the court will rule in favor of petitioners. Dick, your thoughts?
I totally agree with you. You were there, you saw it, but those 3 liberal justices, the way they honed in on those questions was very powerful. And I think it's going to be a 9-0 vote. I hope it's a 9-0 vote, because I think we have to clear up this question right now and not have this stuff hanging over our head.
For guessing, I would guess 8-1.
8-1, okay.
Sotomayor.
Oh, so, okay.
I don't know. Mike, there are 8 Democratic candidates on the ballot, including, of course, President Joe Biden. But Coloradans can also cast a vote for a non-committed delegate or none of the above. Do you see many voters doing that?
Well, I'm sure there'll be a few. National polling shows that the president's getting 90% of Democratic support. So, and he's done well in primaries elsewhere, and so I think he'll have a good night here. I'm going out on a limb. And I do want to let Dick know I'm a Democrat who doesn't like high taxes.
Well, Mike, I've never associated you with those guys.
All right, we will have much more in just a few minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back to Left, Right, Center. This week, our investigative reporter Brian Moss learned Denver's Department of Transportation and Infrastructure is pausing all discretionary spending due to budget issues brought on by the migrant crisis. While 40,000 migrants have come through Denver, the Colorado Sun noted that only 24 families have arrived in Colorado Springs, and some speculate that is because El Paso County and Colorado Springs have made it clear they are not sanctuary cities. You know, Mike, I got an email asking about this very issue. Do you think this label makes a difference?
It made a difference to Texas Governor Greg Abbott, and that's because he decided that the buses would stop in Denver. I think if he thought they should stop in any other city, they probably would have stopped there. But he chartered those buses to Denver, and I think, you know, also whether people knew that Denver was their destination or not. Others told them, hey, you know, we're here, come here, and it's a gateway to get somewhere else. So I think I don't think it was so much that it was advertised nationally that you know, Denver's a sanctuary city, but that there was a political message that the Texas governor wanted to make, and he did.
And all these migrants, they've come through Denver. Not all of them have stayed here. So Denver is not the destination for many of them, in fact. You know, Dick, while Denver's mayor would argue it's inhumane to turn these people away, one of the El Paso County commissioners said it's inhumane to invite them to your city when you don't have the resources to help them.
Yes. And I have a lot of compassion for these folks who come here. They're escaping horrible poverty or in some cases political persecution, like in Venezuela, and I understand that. But you know, Denver set itself up for this. I mean, if they didn't actually declare itself a sanctuary city, they were certainly trying to convey that message. And I like Mayor Johnston a lot, but I got to tell you, when he goes to Washington and blames Republicans for this mess, give me a break. I mean, Joe Biden is the one who opened the gates up after he got elected. And listen, I have a lot of criticism of Donald Trump, but he got control of that border during those 4 years. And Biden, I think he just was trying to prove that he was not Donald Trump, and he reversed those executive orders, and that's why we have the problem. Mayor Johnston should have positioned himself at the gates of the White House and demanded to see the president and tell him get control of the border so we don't have this problem in Denver and Chicago and Los Angeles and New York.
Across the country.
Yeah.
Right. But the oil and gas war is back at the state capitol. A bill introduced this week would phase out new drilling permits by 2030. So, Dick, industry advocates suggest this measure is unconstitutional because it violates private property rights. But proponents say, you know, look, if we're going to address these greenhouse gas emissions, we have to put a definitive end on the date that we're going to end drilling here.
You know, of all the nonsensical things that this legislature is going to do this session, I think this is the worst one. Because the other component to this are the hundreds, the thousands, the tens of thousands of people who will lose their jobs and their businesses if they go through with this. I mean, Democrats love to talk about how they like the little guy and like blue-collar laborers. Well, I'll tell you what. In northern Colorado, those are the people who are going to lose their jobs, and many of them, a big percentage of them, are Hispanics. And I just can't figure out they're doing the same thing with coal miners on the western slope. And I just don't understand this, and it won't serve any purpose in terms of the worldwide climate process situation. And so I just think, hopefully, Governor Polis, who should be the voice of reason, will put an end to this. So.
Yeah, I wonder about that, Mike. Do you see this passing? And if it does pass, do you see Polis signing it?
I don't see it passing this year. You know, we'll be talking in months from now about what's going to happen with legislative races. As we know in the House, there's a veto-proof majority of Democrats, and the Senate's trying to get to that with just one vote. And I think if we see Democrats hold on to their numbers, this type of legislation will come back. Governor Polis will veto it because he kind of declared that we're past this 5 years ago. So, but you know, the progressive Dems will be back in better numbers probably next year, and we'll see something like this again.
Right. I have no doubt, too, it'll be back. Well, finally, Denver City Council rejected a proclamation calling for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. The council had to move the meeting online after pro-Palestinian demonstrators repeatedly disrupted it. One council member cited that as one of the reasons she opposed the measure. So, Dick, you know, dozens of cities have passed these.
Right.
Are you surprised Denver didn't?
I was surprised. In fact, I was gratified they rejected it. But they're starting to overplay their hands. I mean, I saw some of the behavior of that crowd. That's not right. I mean, I don't like it when conservatives are rude, like when Boebert stood up and yelled at the president during State of the Union. I don't like it when they invade a city council, when the left invades a city council meeting. We've got to get some civility back in our politics. And I just hate this. And I'm glad they turned it down.
So, Mike, this was, I think, a big blow to the progressive bloc on that city council.
I don't disagree. I think even a bigger blow, though, Sean, was the mayor's first veto. The progressive bloc voted 7-6 to prevent homeless sweeps during freezing weather.
Right.
And the mayor vetoed it. And then they took it back to try to override the veto, and they only got 6 votes to override it. So while this is more, the Israel-Gaza-Hamas is more of a messaging vote, the reality vote on homeless and the veto was a bigger blow to the progressive side.
All right, well, that'll do it for this installment of Left, Right, Center. We'll see you next week.